All right, we're going to talk about weighted averages. And you experience this every day in school because your grade and your classes are broken down and weighted differently depending on the subcategory. So let's take a look at this first example here and talk about how your average gets calculated in your classes. So here's an example of a student who is taking a biology course, and then they have these grades with 5 different sources. So their grade is actually 50% coming from their test average, and they had an 86 as a test average. And then their midterm was 15% of their overall grade, and they have a 96 on the midterm. The final exam is 20% of the grade with an 82 on that final exam. The lab work was 10% of the grade with a 98 on the lab work, and then the homework is just 5%, and that's probably a completion grade of 100. So let's talk about how we might compute this out. So we want to take these percentages and turn those into decimals so that because they are part of the total. So 50%, of course, is half of the total, which we then want to multiply by the grade that you had for that section. So 86. So that is representing the grade for the portion that contributes to your grade for your test average. Okay. And then now the next little piece is going to come from, so plus the part that comes from the midterm. So the midterm part's going to be 15% of your grade. So I'm going to turn that into a decimal, 0.15, that I multiply by 96. Okay, then I've got the final exam. Okay, so that final exam is going to be this portion. This is how the final exam will contribute to your grade. You've got, let's see, 20%. So that as a decimal is 0.20. And you got an 82 on that final exam. All right, and now the next section that we're going to contribute to your grade is your lab score. So we're going to add, and that is 10% of your grade, of which you had a 98 on your lab. So see here, we've got these different pieces being contributed from different sources. And then, of course, the final piece is the homework. Okay, so we've got that plus whatever that homework. So 5%, 0.05. Okay, and then times, you got 100 on that. All right, so when you multiply those together, here's what is happening. You can see here I multiplied that all out, the 0.50 times the 86. So you have these different separate sections, totals, that contribute to the overall grade. And when you add those all together, you get your 88.6. So that's your overall average. It is not adding and dividing by 5 because you have categories weighted differently. All right, now let's take a look at the next one. Here, a company. Companies have to report their average salaries. We have to, as a school district, report our average salary to compare against other districts and other states and all that kind of stuff. So, based on different criteria, you have different salaries for that number of years you're working. Here's an example. These 2 employees that have a doctor's degree start at 105,000, 7 that have a master's degree start at 74,000, and 11 that have a bachelor's degree start at 51,000. Well, how do you, just in general, how are we getting an average? We're going to add up all those pieces and divide by how many there are. Well, in this case, how many employees' salaries do I need to add together? Well, 2 plus 7 is 9, plus 11 is 20. So I need to add up 20 employees' salaries together, and I'm going to do that this way. 2 of the doctorate salaries plus 7 of the master's salaries plus 11 of the bachelor's employees. And there is the total amount that the company is spending in yearly salaries, but then you divide by the 20 employees to get the average. All right, so next we have 2 different types of cameras. Sonu, I think, is one instead of Sony. Sonu and Conan. So you have got different weighted categories that are contributing to your score of these different kinds of cameras. You're attributing 50% of the score because of the image quality, and 30% of the score based on the battery life, and 20% of the score based on how well it can zoom. So that means each of these have a different rating for each of these different categories. Well, what's their total overall? So I want you to try that right now. Get a total of an overall score for Sonu and the total overall score for Conan, and then we'll compare those and see which has the better rating. So try that now. So I have that here, 50% for the image quality, which Sonu got at 8, plus 30% is the weight attributed to battery life, and Sonu got a 6. 20% is the score attributed to the zooming capabilities, and Sonu got a 7 for that. So its overall score is 7.2. So do the same thing for Conan, which has a 9 for image quality, a 4 for battery life, and a 6 for the zoom range. So here, when we multiply that out, we get 6.9. So then I now have those weighted categories attributing to the overall rating, and I can see overall Sonu is the better category or the better camera. All right, your final one for weighted averages. We've got this one here. So this is interesting. Let's actually kind of talk about this real quick. We have got this situation where Alex has worked a certain number of days per week. Okay, so we've got that going on. And so for 2 weeks, he had worked 1 day each week. 14 weeks, he had worked 2 days each week. There were 8 weeks where he worked 5 days a week, but 32 weeks of that time frame, he was working 7 days a week. Wow. So, what is the average number that he works per week? So, on average, what's he working per week? So, let's see. How did you say we found average? We add them all up and divide by how many there are. So let's find out the total number of days that were worked and then divide by how many weeks that this represents. And that'll tell us the average per week. Average days per week. So here's what that looks like. Let's see. 2 weeks with 1 day plus 14 weeks with 2 days plus 8 weeks with 5 days plus 32 weeks with 7 days. That's a total of 294 days that have been worked. Okay, so over the course of this time, Alex worked 294 days. That's quite a bit. Well, how many weeks did that span? And so, you know what? It's not a year. I thought I made an assumption that it was a year, but if you add these up here, it's actually 56 weeks, not 52 weeks. Okay. So 294 days divided amongst 56 weeks will tell me my average work per week. So there we have it. He's working 5.25 days a week on average. Okay, so that's how you are taking care of your weighted averages. So that's going to serve you in a lot of places in your life. I hope that you can see where all of those will come into play, and I hope that you understand that so that you can compute those correctly.